Live. Hello,
Hello.
everyone. So, this has been a long time coming with Lisa. We've been chatting for quite some time and following each other on LinkedIn mainly. But Lisa Rangel is joining us from New Jersey, USA today. And I wanted to say welcome to Eudaimonia Live Show, where I interview amazing people who sprinkle a little bit of Eudaimonia in our lives every day. And you're one of them, in case you didn't know.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So, while I introduce our guest, whoever is joining us now, you can let us know if you hear this message later on as well, where you're connecting from and what piqued your curiosity to join us today, apart from obviously having an amazing and experienced guest who's going to give us a lot of tips and a lot of advice on how she helps senior executives land their dream role in any industry, really, and across the globe as well. So, global experience from Lisa today. So, Lisa Rangel, do I say it correctly? Rangel,
Yeah,
right?
you got it.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, is the founder and CEO of ChameleonResumes.com, the premier executive firm, resume writing firm, and JobLandingAcademy.com, the do-it-yourself career portal. So do check them out, and I'll put some information on the comments on this live show afterwards as well. Lisa's mission in life is to continue to make the world a happier place with one fulfilling, well paying job change at a time. She goes very deep and bespoke with her clients one by one using her 4-step M.E.T.A job landing system. You can ask her what that is in a moment if you wanted to. So she has successful clients in 88 plus countries ranging across all the continents, and has been featured and quoted in more than 200 plus publications around the world. And for those who don't know me, a little bit of a Lisa knows me, but for those who are listening afterwards, I'm Christina Garidi. I am a purpose and career coach, and I have founded Eudaimonia Coaching UK, and I'm on a mission to democratize human flourishing. I coach ambitious professionals to decode their purpose and find career alignment. I introduced the Eudaimonia Success Model in 2018 as a TEDx speaker, and I am writing my book on how to access the eudaimonic state of mind. So I'm working through the portals now of accessing the eudaimonic state of mind. But today, Lisa will share with us how she creatively helps executives land their senior roles globally. And it is quite timely, actually, that we are talking together, because I was just looking online on how many jobs have been lost in the tech industry just in 2023. Just in the US, I believe, it's over 250,000 jobs. And that's already 50% higher than last year. And it keeps growing, says TechCrunch. So I don't know how much of that you are seeing in the industry, Lisa, and how much of that you have to catch and help people with. But it will be useful to tell us what has been the experience of that, in the American, but also in the global industry that you help executives around the world as well. How are you receiving that?
It's certainly had a ripple effect, not just obviously, directly in the US, but a ripple effect around the globe, that type of layoff number.
Mhm.
I for senior executives and senior professionals, I'm 53, so I'll put myself in that bracket as a senior professional, senior executive. This is probably the third or fourth downturn many of us have been through, and so we've seen this coming in some ways. What goes up must come down. What goes down definitely goes back up.
Mhm.
What grows contracts. What contracts eventually grows again.
Mhm.
So I think many senior level professionals and executives have been preparing for something like this. It doesn't mean you're always going to be precisely timing it or getting it right. It doesn't mean you won't be taken by surprise. But the key really is to be prepared and never assume that you're immune or that it can never happen to you. I find that if people tend to think that, and there's a lack of humility in that they think it'll never happen to them, often those are the ones that tend to fall the hardest. So I think that if you're new to the workplace, this may seem really devastating to go through this type of downturn, but it will be one of the the first of many. And I hate to say it that way, is I don't mean that in any negative way, but it's really just what happens in business. It's what happens in life, and I think the key is really to be prepared. And then secondly, anticipating that something like this could always be possible is have a mindset that there is ethical opportunity in chaos, or ethical opportunity even in downturns. Where does the pocket of opportunity lie in a downturn? And if you have the ability to see that or foresee that, you're going to have a continuous career, because that type of mindset is always in demand.
I love that. And this is why I started following Lisa online. And I think it was just after the COVID chaos has hit,
Hmm.
um, where I have found some of your online videos. So Lisa shares a lot of beautiful advice for senior executives out there on how to creatively find jobs when job roles are not being posted, how to
Hmm.
use your network, but also the mindset shifts that you create for your clients and for your audience, because you do a lot of that for free online. You create content almost daily, to help people actually see the opportunities, as you say, and help them utilize them, and really land the jobs that they need. Despite, it's not just taking a job just to be employed, but actually your mission
Right.
is to help them find well paid but fulfilling jobs as well. And this is a difficult time, because a lot of the reorgs that organizations are doing, they're getting rid of fat, as we used to
Hmm.
call it as well in my change management
Right.
days, which is the senior positions that need to go. But then with that goes wisdom, goes experience, goes organization and good leadership as well. And of course, demoralization follows, and so on. But let's actually come back to the agenda. But it was just timely that we didn't really plan it. We planned it a few months ago, but I think
Right. And then that's,
in those 2 months, we've seen the news, and it has been just heartbreaking to see what has come
yeah.
just before Christmas for people this year as well. We just hoped it would stop for a while, but it doesn't
Well,
seem.
it's interesting that you bring up the right before the holiday. In 2008, I oversaw a group that 40 people, and I had to lay off half of them the week before Thanksgiving.
Oof.
So, and it was difficult. It was hard. Um, and I then lost my job about 4 months later, but and probably should have lost my job that same day. I laid everybody off, to be honest, but somehow the management kept me on for another 4 months. But that's my point. Like, that was 2008. Like, this is something that happens every year in some capacity. And so I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it should happen this way. I'm not saying it couldn't be done better. But I think just knowing that it could happen,
Hmm.
that's 15 years later, and it's the same kind of thing that's happening.
Hmm.
Um, it's just something to never think we're immune from. But on the positive side, I have a featured video on my LinkedIn profile, why hiring happens at companies announcing layoffs. And hiring still happens at all these companies that are announcing layoffs.
Yeah.
There's still open roles.
Hmm.
In the US, around the globe, there's still employment numbers that are happening, even if they're lower than expected. People are still
Hmm.
getting hired. It's not like zero people are ever getting hired. It just might be lower than expected, but the point is, people are still getting hired, right? And ultimately, any one of us doing a job search, we need one job.
Yeah.
That's really it. So I try to tell people not to pay attention to the news as much or the headlines as much, because it just sort of screws with your head, right? And ultimately, you just need to find the opportunity where it exists, position yourself as the solution to that problem, and land one role. You just need to land one role and
Hmm.
not solve the unemployment problem, or not solve the tech layoff, dilemma,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
so ultimately we just need to find one role and find the niche of opportunity where you can present yourself as the solution, which is kind of the root of the conversation today.
Exactly. And I love how you simplify the problem, because all of these headlines can get in our head, and
Oh,
you know,
big time.
it's one role, and we need to position ourselves as a solution to the job opportunity or the problem that the company has. And I
Mhm.
love what you say. Your messages are always so positive. Every company that's laying off is still hiring because they need to bring talent in. They need to bring the talent in when they're losing a lot of talent and a lot of skill set as well at
Mhm.
the same time. So I love that, and I think that's what hooked me into following you for a long time. So let's go into some of our questions.
Yeah.
A bit irrelevant, but I think very relevant. Why chameleon resumes? What is it about chameleons?
Well, I wish it was a very sexy, answer as to why chameleons, but, at the time when I just described how I was laid off in 2009, and I was kind of burnt out on recruiting, and I did a lot of financial, corporate, I don't want to say stuffy, but very conservative type of company, third party recruiting. And everyone was maroon and gray and slate blue and very, very, just very conservative type of company cultures. And I was a little burnt out on all of it. And I really wanted it to be fun and a lot more flexible. And at the time, the companies that were flourishing in the career space were Monster, Career Builder, and Yahoo Jobs, if you remember. And I kind of piggybacked on all their market research, and I took kind of all their colors that they used, and it made me. And at the time, I loved chameleons and geckos, and gecko resumes didn't really have as sexy of a ring to it. So I picked chameleon, and it kind of embraced all the colors of what was soaring in the
The
career
rainbow.
space at that time. Yeah, so I took all the colors of those career companies that piggybacked all their market research and went with chameleon resumes, and that's just stuck.
I love
It
it. I
really
love
wasn't
it.
that sexy of a reason.
It definitely is sexier than Career Monster or whatever else is
Yeah,
out there, for sure. I love the name, of course, and I had to ask because I was like, there must be a story, and there you go. There was a story, and it is a sexy story. You always
it could
have
have been
some.
gecko resumes. I don't know where I would have went with that, but
Um, it could have. You never
it
know.
could.
But
Maybe someone else can run with it. I don't know.
Lisa has done all the market research, so you can just pick it up now.
That's it, exactly.
And of course, I came across your online phenomenal content, as I shared before, and your advice is so to the point, and the way you communicate it is brilliant. And you just take a small problem and you just take it all the way, into deeply explaining all the aspects or all the ways in which somebody can overcome this problem. And
Mhm.
it's really caring the way you share your message. So I find it unique because it has a lot of storytelling, a lot of vulnerability, personality, a lot of intellect, and a lot of fun.
Thank you.
So Lisa was telling me we're going to have fun before we come to this, live show today. So apart from all of that, practical advice too. So long wait for me to say how much I appreciate Lisa as a recruiter or helpful coach to help people land senior executive roles. And I've been recommending her to my clients as well
Thank you.
because that's her specific expertise. And the way she asks questions and shifting perspectives, as you've seen already, the way she sees headlines and how she helps her clients move from unhelpful thinking to very helpful thinking. So coaching, in essence.
Thank you.
So a little bit of a preempt to really get to the question that I wanted
Mhm.
to ask you, which is, I know that a lot of people, of course, when they come to you, they may have different issues.
Mhm.
Either the resume, of course, might be a communication tool that needs a little bit of, of a revamp, but many other things. But what are perhaps the most common myths or mistakes that you see, or the issues, perhaps,
Right.
when people find you? And of course, we know your mission now. When they come to you, what they come with that you help them with, and you get them unstuck. What would you say on
Yeah, I mean, people are different. They come to us with some unique problems, but at the same time, the problems, as heavy as they may feel to the person, thankfully aren't very unique to us. We hear very much similar types of dilemmas, which I think is just proof that we're not alone, that all of us have similar problems despite how heavy or unique they may feel to us.
Mhm.
And the key is, I think, reaching out for help. And once you do, you'll start to see just how much you're not alone and that people do have similar issues. Some of the common problems we have are people who've been working, say, 15, 20 years at a particular company. They've been promoted every so often, um, gainfully employed, and then either feel that their job's at risk or it actually is lost,
Yeah.
and they haven't had to do a job search in 15 to 20 years. And I tend to, and they feel terrible about it. And I'll just remind them that you're not good at looking for a job because you've had a blessing, right? Like, you've been gainfully employed for 15, 20 years, and that's why you're not good at this. And it's a skill set you can learn.
Mhm.
You can learn how to job search. You
Yeah.
can learn how to build a network. You
Mhm.
can build a resume that markets you
Mhm.
amongst the sea of competitors, beyond your reputation. You can fix all those problems. But
Mhm.
if you were good at looking for a job, it's probably because you were changing jobs every 3 to 4 years, which that in of itself is a problem, right? So,
Mhm.
it's a matter of reminding people that sometimes the problems they have are actually good problems, right?
Yeah.
Like, I tell my kids, you're never going to be problem free. So the key is to have good problems, right? I always, problems of abundance or problem as opposed to problems of scarcity, or problems of looking every so often as opposed to
Mhm.
not looking, and that's why you don't know how to look. So, I think the first mindset is really to sort of choose your problems and be grateful for where you're at, because
Mhm.
once you accept where you're at, then you can start to build.
Yeah.
Like I said, so one common scenario is just that people don't know how to look, but because, again, they've been gainfully employed.
Yeah.
Another common problem is people don't keep their networks up.
Mm.
So then when they find that they do need it, they feel a little cheesy reaching out to people just
Yeah.
only when they need it.
Mhm.
And I found myself in that kind of position actually in 2009. I was so busy, heads down, breadwinner, working, got to work at my job. I didn't really keep my network,
Mhm.
you know,
We all fall into that
updated, except for the context of work, as a
Yeah.
recruiter. And when I found myself laid off in 2009, I just committed to starting then. I was like, okay, well, I can't fix it. I can't all of a sudden pretend that I called people when I didn't need them. I got to just start now.
Mm.
And I did. But I would start by asking people how they were. I didn't put my needs forward first, even though
Yeah.
I really, really wanted to, because I really needed to work, you know.
Yeah.
But you
Mhm.
just have to start where you start,
Yeah.
and it is a
There's no point
fixable
blaming,
problem.
right? It's
Yeah,
about yeah.
acceptance of where
Mhm.
you're at
Mm.
really helps you start to build whatever's next. Constantly having remorse over what you didn't do or did do, maybe wrongly or whatever. I'm not saying that's not human, but it's just not helpful, right?
Mhm.
To stay
Most of us have
ruminating
to
there.
prioritize work, and we do that first,
Right,
and then the network just, is a little bit more on the second priority
right.
layer.
So that's another common misconception is that if you haven't built it, you can't do it, or you can't do
Mm.
it qualitatively. You can. Another common misconception is that executive recruiters will find you work.
Mm.
And in a good year, only about 10 to 15% of hires happen through executive recruiters. I think next year, sources of higher studies are going to find that this year, even less,
Mm.
people got hired through executive recruiting, because there's a fee associated every time an executive recruiter places someone. And companies don't really want to pay executive recruiting fees this year. They feel like they don't have to. They're
Okay.
doing a lot of recruiting on their own and not paying a
Be
fee.
listening up to that.
Yeah. So, if you're sitting around kind of waiting for a recruiter to call you, an executive recruiter to call you, in hoping that they place you and it'll absolve you from having to do a job search, I think a lot of those types of people doing that type of hoping and that type of strategy are finding themselves struggling.
Yeah.
There really needs to be an active approach to
You
networking.
cannot
60 to
outsource that part, can you?
Yeah, you can't
Mhm.
outsource it. 60 to 65% of hires happen through networking, employee referrals, social media contacts, personal connections, people you don't know, even sometimes more so in the second, third, fourth degree connections that you
Oh,
get
wow.
introduced to or you reach out to.
Mhm.
And if you are not doing that part, you're really leaving so much on the table
Mm.
that you're not engaging in. And if you're and then you can see the math. I said 60 to 65%,
Oh,
10 to
yeah.
50%. That gap is 20 to 25% of hires happening through job postings. Um, so the key is not to do any one. Another assumption is any one task is going to be the magic elixir, when actually it's really doing a little bit of everything to make sure you're increasing your odds of something coming through.
Yeah.
Um, because not one, one approach isn't going to work all the time for everybody.
Of
So you
course.
do need to do a few things.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I mean, those are some common misconceptions that I think
Yeah.
people get stuck in. Or one last one. We're in the midst of the holidays in some capacity around the globe, and
I
people
see.
think the holidays are a slow period of time. And while there might be fewer openings, I could tell you if those openings are happening in December and not being put off to January, they're genuinely open, and they're very urgent hires that need to be filled quickly, because otherwise the recruiter would wait till January to do the hire. And since there's a lot of candidates that assume December's slow, you're typically up against fewer candidates for more urgent positions.
Yeah.
So you actually can really get hired in December. When I was an executive recruiter, December was sometimes my second, third, or fourth highest month for fees. So it was always on the higher side of a month ranking, and it's because of those reasons. If openings exist in December, they're genuinely open, and then you're up against fewer candidates. There tends to be fewer rounds, fewer selectivity in terms of who they choose, and
Mhm.
you're more likely to get hired.
Yeah. I really did like some of your posts on that recently, because when senior positions are open, as you say, during this time, it's
Hmm.
because there has been an exit of some sort. It doesn't matter
Right.
how, and suddenly senior teams are up for. I need somebody very experienced right now
Yeah.
to do the job.
I mean, it could. Some people say it could be a red flag for it's a dysfunctional employer, and that might be right too, right? But as an executive, sometimes we're brought in to fix that.
Mhm.
So it's never going to be. I think it'll be hard to find a perfect role as an executive. The employer's doing everything right, because they may not. If they're doing everything right, they may not need somebody like you,
Mhm.
especially if you're a transformation person or you're a change agent, or
Mhm.
someone who deals with disruptive technologies. That I mean, those environments tend to breed some sort of dysfunction that's happening, and you tend to go in then as the elixir to fix it, right? So that's where you need to be a skilled interviewer and determine what kind of dysfunction you're entering, and is it something you want to tolerate, or is it something you don't want to tolerate. But when you are, a lot of executives tend to be fixers, and so it part of the imperfection through the interview process, it could very well be what you're fixing if you're hired. So
Mhm.
that's sort of the determination and the evaluation. I think if you're staff or mid-level, those types of red flags could be genuine red flags that make you not want to take the job, because systemically then you'll just have to deal with it every day.
But at
But
least you're
those
not
same
an overview.
flags, yeah, those same red flags as an executive could be exactly what you're being brought in to fix. And so that's sometimes what you have to determine.
Yeah. I love your advice. Absolutely. Let's turn up to the interview and then, make sense of the situation for ourselves, and then
Right.
actually, have those conversations and say, are you aware enough that you need to fix that? And yeah, take it from there. I love that you're advising people to go against the masses, to do things differently
Hmm.
in order to be able to land a senior job. And as you are, of course, working with people on a more bespoke and deeply personal level as well, because
Hmm.
you're coaching them as well. It's not like you're fixing their CV, off you go, because
Right.
there's few beliefs in the background, right?
Right.
Especially
It
with
is comprehensive, right?
exactly. What do you witness to be the most common takeaways that people take away when they work with you? Because it's not just a job, a higher
Right.
paying job that's more fulfilling, and perhaps a career change that they're taking away. there's something more, of course, I'm sure, that is coming out of those sessions. What would you say the light bulb moments are for your clients when they work with
I think what happens pretty commonly is people, we work with a lot of very competent, successful people that seem to say yes to everything around them. Like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll take that on. Yeah, I'll fix it. And in saying yes consistently, they kind of lose themselves,
Mm,
and they start to lose what they want because they're just doing what's in front. They're like, I can make that work, I can fix that, and they're never or infrequently doing the gut check of like if they want to do that
mm,
anymore, or just. So what we try to sift through with them when they come to us is, just because you can, you may not want to anymore, right? And really starting to put a list of achievements together on a resume or on a profile, to it speaks to what they want to continue doing, and not speak to everything they've ever done,
yeah.
because some of that stuff they've done in the past, they don't want to do anymore.
Mhm.
I could tell you at 53, there's things I'm great at, I don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're leading with that on your resume or on your profile, guess what? You're going to keep getting calls for that amazing thing that you don't want to do anymore.
Mhm.
So it's helping them sift through what they don't want to do anymore and making sure they're not marketing that. That's sometimes a really tough transition, to let some of that stuff go
Yeah.
on your marketing materials. It doesn't mean you won't talk about it on an interview. It doesn't mean you're not going to bond over it, over a discussion, over a networking, call or drink or something like that. But to remove it from your marketing material, and maybe it was something that was really a big part of your identity for a while, it is a transition. But once people let that go and
Mm,
really embrace what they want to continue doing,
mm.
they tend to find, more contentment. It doesn't mean they're problem free, right? But it
Of
just,
course, never. There's better problems, as we were
yeah,
discussing.
at least they're choosing their problems, right? They're the problems exist in the things they want to continue doing, instead of the problems existing in things they don't want to do again anymore.
Yeah. And I really appreciate here the difference of what they want to do and what they can do. There's a huge difference in the two, and
Mhm.
perhaps even the terminology of resume and CV helps here, because of course in the UK and the rest of Europe we were using the CV
Right,
concept, where it's literally a curriculum video, what I've achieved throughout my whole life.
right.
And it's much longer. Whereas in the US, of course, it's a resume, it's a summary, and that
Mhm,
focuses the mind on actually targeting, using it as a marketing tool to target
mhm.
the jobs and the employers I want to connect with, in order to be able to enter a dance of getting to know each other and interview and
Right,
so on. And having that clarity is huge for senior level executives to be able to find the right match, I can imagine. And is there anything else that normally related perhaps to, I can imagine, self-worth that comes from this process of working with you, to sift and let go of what they don't want anymore, and actually be so aligned? I mean, I call that career alignment in the end,
yeah,
because when I work with purpose, people become more clear about, okay, I can do a customer experience call center job, but actually this is not what I want to do going
right.
forward. What do I want to do? And sometimes there is a gap of, oh, I've never done it. But do you get those situations? And if you do,
Yeah, I think there's, when you can give yourself permission to really focus on what you want versus what you should do, right, or can do,
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of freedom associated with that, and you just feel lighter, mentally and physiologically lighter. I can't explain it. That's not my expertise, but just, I just see it happen. And there's a clarity too. You start to evaluate the opportunities before you alongside what you want to do versus everything you can do.
Mhm.
So as a result, you can get more specific.
Mm.
You get more opportunity, and it's funny, there's this weird phenomenon, another, to go back to your earlier question of some myths or misconceptions. People tend to think that to find something, they need to be very broad, so they can, in theory, capture all these ideas that come to them, or capture all these approaches that may come to them, when in actuality, when you're broad, your audience can't latch on to how you may fit within what they're looking for.
Mm,
Specificity really is the key to moving forward.
yeah,
People think that by being specific, they're limiting opportunities, and that's actually not true.
it's not true.
When you're specific, people can identify with what you're promoting, and they see you as, now that you've identified with one specific lane, so to speak, picking a lane, they may say to you, I see that you want this, but would you consider that?
Mm,
But when you're broad, they don't even somehow register that you may consider something else. I don't know why this happens, but it happens consistently. And where I learned this was when I was selling recruiting services. When I was selling recruiting services, I was mostly in accounting and finance, executive recruiting, and I would call upon CFOs and controllers, and I would, be pitching them my services. And if I went to them saying like, "Oh, I pitch, I do accounting and finance placement services. I'd love to meet with you and assess your needs and see how I can help," I pretty much was like hung up on, or they told me no every time. And even though I would say it a little bit more eloquently than that, but essentially that's what I was doing. But when I pitched them a candidate, and I would say, I'm representing this current CFO, he or she's out of this industry, they've done this type of work. I see that you need that type of work done. Is this somebody that you would consider for an interview, or know of someone that needs this type of work? They're like, you know what? I would get several answers. I would get, I don't really need a CFO candidate, on an interim basis, but like, do you have a tax consultant?
ah, mhm,
Because they started to view me as a solution,
yeah,
or they'd say, I don't need that type of position, but we're going to be hiring for this position in 6 months. Let's meet then. Or they would say, I don't need that, but I know so and so needs that. So why don't you go talk to so and so?
yeah. And
And
what
when you
specific
start being
work
viewed as a specific solution, they wonder if you have another solution behind the one you're offering.
or a similar one or
Or a
somebody
similar
who
one, or right. But when you are so broad, they don't view you as a solution, and they don't even know where to start asking.
yeah, yeah,
So again, that's above my pay grade as to why it works. I just know it works, so I do it.
yeah. It's like
And
a
it's the
puzzle.
same thing with job searching. When you say I'm a senior executive, they don't say, do you want a controller job or a director of marketing job? They think like, well, I don't need a senior executive. But as soon as you say I'm a CFO,
Hmm.
they're like, well, will you consider this director of finance role? It's the same size company, but we don't call it that. Or like they start looking at different ways that something can work,
Yeah.
and start pitching at you if you would consider these other ways.
Hmm.
So
Ah, thank you.
excuse me. So by being specific, you actually get more traction, and you get more opportunities for conversations.
Yeah.
And that's another misconception that people tend to make. They think they need to be broad, or as they are getting less answers, then they start going broader, thinking, "Oh, I got to be broader." When in actuality, you need to be more specific.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you for this advice, and it's golden advice. The more generic we are, the more people lose what we're here for, and therefore they don't consider us. Whereas if we're so specific, they will remember. And when the opportunity arises, they are more likely to come back to us as well. Um,
Mhm.
no, I have noticed that as a business owner, small
I was
business
just going to
owner.
say, we learn this in business, right? They tell us not to say that we can serve everybody. They tell us to be very specific.
Stressful as well to try and serve everybody.
Oh my God, right? But on the flip side, so we do our marketing, and we market strictly for corporate executives, anywhere around the globe, but really corporate executives is our specialty. My team, we're all ex-executive recruiters, but our executive level clients refer us their professional level spouses, and as long as they're looking for corporate roles, we can help. Or
Mhm.
they refer us their adult children graduating college. And as long as they're looking for corporate roles, we can help. Like, I know my lane, but
Yeah.
it can be, but I'm not marketing for college kids. I'm not marketing for professional services. I can do it,
Mhm.
but people view me as a solution. So they say, would you help my kid? Would you help my wife? Would you help my husband? You know, but if I said I helped everybody, I'm telling you, it people can't latch. There's nothing for them to latch on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
that's
it's
it's that
full.
same thing.
Mhm, mhm. And this is the element of storytelling you bring,
Mhm.
how you say what you're giving them, because it could be 500 million people that can actually, fit the role because they can do it. But actually, who do you need in that role?
Right.
Who knows how to do this very specific thing very well. Um, no, I completely agree with you on that, and it has been very helpful for a lot of my clients to be more specific about their purpose too,
Mhm.
especially when they're realigning their career and their CV back to that, so that they can find the next position that helps them too. And as we are coming into magical season, um, I wanted to ask you if you had a secret wish for all your clients and all the people out there in the market, perhaps having a difficult time at the moment. What would you say you would like them to come out with in order to land their dream job um, out there? So,
Yeah.
had a magical wand.
If so, the obvious magical one is that everybody finds what they need, right? I think that's the obvious one. But I would say if I can get a secondary wand, if you would allow me that,
I
is is to be okay with rejection.
Mm,
Because when you make your messaging specific, the goal is to not appeal to everyone.
mhm,
And so inadvertently, you will have people who will say you're not it, or this isn't the right thing.
mm,
And that is okay. You know, I honestly believe, I'm not a religious person, but I believe in this saying, rejection is God's protection, or, in the agnostic way of putting it, the rejection is the universe's protection. Like, I could tell you that in hindsight, most times when I've been rejected, um, it turned out to be the best thing for me. And it turned out to be the path I shouldn't have been on.
mm.
Um, and I was too stubborn at the time to see it, to pull myself out of it. So I had to, quote, get rejected.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
and I say most because there's some rejections I've received I don't have the answers for, but I just have faith the fact that it was probably not the right thing.
Mhm.
And I think if you try so hard for something and you still get rejected for it, the universe is telling you something, even if you can't hear the message at the time, right? And so, um, that's, to take comfort in the fact that rejection is probably the universe telling you that there's something better out for you out there. And
Mhm.
I think that that is what I really wish for people, because we're somehow have become a universe that we're afraid of being rejected. And we do a lot of things as a people to avoid rejection. And
Mm.
it's that fear of rejection that I think puts a lot of us on paths we shouldn't be. And so if we can become more comfortable with it and take risks that we are getting rejected, then I think there will be a lot more happiness in the world. I don't think happiness resides in having the dream job. I think happiness for most of us resides in being okay with where we're getting rejected.
Yeah. Wow. What a deep message and wish for everyone. So perhaps we need a T-shirt. Lisa Rangel,
We need merch.
getting rejected. Yeah, I've heard this phrase. Yeah, it's God's rejection is God's.
Yeah, definitely not my phrase. I should be very clear about that. I'm not claiming credit for that.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's such a wonderful and important reminder for all of us. We have to ask for what we want, and we
Mhm,
might get a no. And if we do,
exactly.
then it means that we need to knock on the next door. And it is what it is. But just living for validation, as I say in my own language,
Yeah,
and just not to hear that rejection because we are afraid of it, will not put us necessarily in the paths that are our dream job, or definitely not fulfillment, because fulfillment can be uncomfortable at times, many times.
yeah,
If we're talking about purposeful careers, for sure. um, and from working with thousands of successful, of course, and ambitious people, and propelling them to achieve their dreams and get fulfillment from their work, their daily work, I'm curious about what you find intriguing in that role. And of course, if you didn't love it, you wouldn't be doing it. But I wonder how you experience your role, because you're not at the forefront. You're not presenting the candidates. You're not the protagonist, and
right.
I probably can relate to you on this. You're sitting in the background, helping them, pushing them, pulling them if you need to sometimes, right? You
Dragging them? No kidding.
I'm sure you get a lot of talented executives, senior level people who perhaps somewhere along the way, through whatever story they carry with them in their heart, they have lost their confidence, or they are,
Yeah.
looking for something that they think is impossible when they come to you, and you work with them to move them.
Or
So,
they're afraid of losing what they have, and that can paralyze people to take
mhm,
additional risks or additional, options. They're afraid of losing what they have. So,
that's probably the biggest fear I think we have
yeah,
as humans. It's not even death or public speaking. I think it's losing what
what we have. Yeah,
earned,
that's true,
so
actually.
much hard work, and our titles, our jobs, our status,
Right.
our salary, our family security
Yeah.
is naturally the things
Very natural.
that scare us most. So as you're working in the background, in the shadows, helping these amazing people because you find the talent in them, you just bring it back out.
They've had it.
Exactly. And I don't think for a moment there's people who are absolutely not capable for doing great things out here in the world. How do you experience your role? And I'm just not going to say anything more. I'm just going to
Yeah.
open question.
That's a great question. I really find satisfaction in people figuring out that they've had it all along, and I didn't create anything in anyone. One of my biggest pet peeves is, personal branding that, feels like they have to create something for somebody. And I'm like, no, they've kind of had a brand their whole time.
Mm,
They just maybe don't know what people were, they didn't have a label for it. They didn't see it themselves, or but everybody has a brand already. Just because it's not promoted all over LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
mhm.
So I view myself as a facilitator, as you say, not as a promoter. But I find satisfaction in not being the person who needs the credit. Like I said, my team and I are great at helping people see what's within them all along. And sharing with them, teaching them sort of my, politely persistent way of reaching out to people so they can at least be heard. And I think that I don't give up easily. I keep reaching out to people until I get a no. And I think teaching people that in a way that is polite, respectful, but persistent, it really helps them unleash the ability of being seen and heard to get recognized for what they do. And that to me is, I think, the key to freedom. It's the key. If you feel stuck, it's because you're not getting your message out to people. And if you can be shown how to get your message out to people in a way that isn't slimy or overly salesy or anything like that, then you can have a better chance of being recognized and promoted. And that's teaching people that skill set that I've learned myself and developed over the years is something that's very rewarding for me, because I was an introvert. I mean, I still am an introvert. I'm just an introvert that plays well with extroverts, but I was an introvert who got passed over, didn't get seen earlier in my life. And I realized if I didn't learn how to do this, I'd probably be stuck and frustrated for the rest of my life. And in my late 20s is when I really had this epiphany that I have to learn how to do this. And that I want, if people didn't have that same epiphany early on, I want to help them along whatever stage they're in.
And it's the time that they come to you that, it's the right time for them to learn it. So
That's it, right? They're ready when they're ready.
to getting what we want. And Lisa is the person to speak to. She has huge experience. She has seen four downturns, three to four.
Depending how you define it, right?
And she has been helping people all through this time to find their next fulfilling job, and still in the middle of all of this headlines and terrible news, to actually get a well-paying job to secure their families. There's always an opportunity if you specify, if you get a few more rejections in order to refine your message, but also be able to help get the help when you need it and learn the methods in order to be able to keep asking persistently so that you are heard. From an introvert who knows how to do it and live in an extroverted world that can be quite loud, but actually, if you have the right message and you hit the right doors, you knock on the right doors, then you will be able to open them. So, to our audience, give us a high five whenever you're listening in the comments. And if you loved the tips from Lisa today that she generously shared with us, let us know. And I don't know if we will have any later questions at some point. I will let you know. We'll tag you so that
Yeah.
you know, and you can answer them. But I will share Lisa's details on all of the channels that we have been broadcasting today. So you will be able to connect with her on LinkedIn. If you haven't followed her already, you should. Her content is fantastic. So if you need to career change, or if you need to step up your career, in any way, you should be signing up to her newsletter. And thank you for opening up for us, how recruiters think and operate with senior level executives, but also your generosity in sharing all the advice and tips on how candidates can rise above the masses, on how everybody does things,
Hmm.
be creative in how they land their jobs today. Lisa will be always open for your questions. And thank you for following us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time. And, really, really appreciate all your work all these years, for inspiring me all these years. And I'm so glad we made it happen, the two of us
Same.
today. Thank you.